Hey everyone, welcome back to RetroBreak and welcome to the second part of my Japanese games collection. I've actually rearranged the shelves since I did part one, so we're going to start from about halfway through and work our way down, and there's a lot more there than there was before. And I have been reading your comments, so I will take a little bit more time as I'm going through this. And I've actually managed to fit in a lot more games here than there were previously, and if the camera follows me down here, I've actually brought all of my gaming books up as well, or at least some of the ones that are related to Japanese games. So without further ado, let's start by taking a look at this shelf here. So this shelf here, as you can see, consists of PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, and the beginning of the PC Engine collection there as well. So let's go back over to this end and we can start off by taking a look at what PlayStation 1 games I've got. Japanese PlayStation 1 games. And there's not actually that many, but let's start off here and pull them out one by one and we can take a look at what's on the shelf. So the first one here is Raiden Project, and this is a really great port of Raiden 1 and 2 for the PS1. I love those games so much. Some of my all-time favourite shoot-'em-ups. Next to that we have Rockman X5, and in case you didn't know, with Japanese games, something really cool. On one side they'll have the Japanese title, and on the other side, if you're lucky, they'll actually have the name in English as well. So if you were wondering how so many of my Japanese games here have English text, it is because they have English on one side and Japanese on the other. It does mean that when I pull them out, they're actually going to be facing backwards. So actually, let's try and free up a bit more space and we can go through them in this direction. That's a very, very basic version of Tetris, just the Tetris, that's literally all it's called. This one does not have English on either side. This is a 2-in-1 game of Raystorm and Layer Crisis, I think its English name is. Two really, really cool vertical scrolling shoot-'em-ups. I love my vertical scrolling shoot-'em-ups, if you didn't guess already. There's Rockman 8. Kind of mixed opinions on this one. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm in the it's okay but not my favourite camp, so somewhere in between. Legend of Mana next, and some incredible graphics for the system. I really love the art style of Legend of Mana. Well, I love the art style for the entire Mana series, but that one's one of my favourites for sure. Now this is an interesting one, Tail Concerto. This is actually in the same series as one of my favourite DS games, Solar to Robo. As you can see, it looks very similar, and again, the graphics are really nice. Let's try going back round this way. I don't know what way these covers are facing. Next we have Jumpin' Flash 2. For those of you that don't know, the Jumpin' Flash games are a series of really cool 3D platformers. Now next up, of course, one of my favourite games for the system, Umihara Kawase. This is Umihara Kawase Shun. This one is a completely new game, like a sequel to the original SNES release, and it's really fun. It was remade on the PSP, which I showed off in the last video, but that version is nowhere near as good as this one. Now, here's one that my friend Jack is a massive fan of. This is Popular Croix. Again, a game that was on the PSP, but this is the PS1 version. And I've never actually played this one. Obviously, with it being a JRPG, it's kind of difficult with the language barrier, but it's just really cool to have. This is one that I've never played. This is from the first time I ever went to Japan, and it's actually still in its original, well, not its original packaging, but it's in the packaging of when I picked it up back in 2014, and I've never actually opened it. And did I just mix them up? Yep, there's Umihara again. Let's put that there. Now this is one that took me a long time to find, and actually this one should go further down on the shelf because this is actually something that I bought as part of the Quintet series, and this entire section here on this shelf is all Quintet stuff, so I'm going to leave that there and we can look at that separately in just a bit. And that's it for the PlayStation 1 games. Not a really massive selection, so please let me know in the comments below what other PS1 games you would recommend me add to my collection. And now we're moving on to Sega Saturn, which I actually have a much better selection of games for, but still not that many. But let's start off with some heavy hitters here. First up is Batsugun, which is one of the first ever bullet hell style shoot-'em-ups, and what an incredible game this is. It really is the birth of a new genre in a way, and I really do appreciate everything they did in that game. And again, another amazing vertical scrolling bullet hell style shoot-'em-up, Dodonpachi, and I do have the original Donpachi in here as well somewhere. Here's another very heavy hitting. Here's another heavy hitter for the Saturn. Here's another heavy hitter for the Saturn shoot 'em up library, Battle Gregor, another really, really cool game for the system. And there's the original Donpachi, or Donpatch, as it says on the title screen. So here's the original. Bit of a faded cover. Might want to upgrade that to a better condition one in the future. But the game itself is awesome, although obviously Donpachi is a lot better. Now next we have a very interesting game. This is one of the first well-known visual novels. This is Yuno, a girl who chants love at the bounds of this world. And I actually picked this one up for a video that I never ended up making, and that is because the PS4 version of this, the remake, was actually sent over to me. The PS4 remake was actually sent over to me by Numskull, the publishers of the game, but I never actually got round to playing it or making a video, so that is kind of a leftover of a previous project. There's Princess Crown there, a game with incredible graphics by Vanillaware, obviously famous for Odin Sphere, and a bunch of other really cool games. This is one of their earlier games, and it's so cool. I don't really have much to say about Jabokkas or G-Bokkas, whatever you want to call it. It's just a weird fighting game. I picked this one up in Japan because I didn't know what it was. And the same here with RoboPit as well. Again, don't really have much to say about that one. Now here's a cool game. I bought this one off a friend on Twitter, and I kept this one in its packaging because of the spine card there. This is Bubble Symphony. Again, amazing 2D graphics. The Saturn is obviously a 2D powerhouse, and that is one of the games that shows that off. And now we have some more vertical scrolling shooters. Let's put these next to each other. We have Sokyu Guruntai 2. First of all, we have Sokyu Guruntai. This one is kind of a 3D style vertical scrolling shooter, kind of similar to some of the ones like Ray Crisis or Layer Section on the PS1. And we also have Layer Section here on the Saturn, which is the same game. That I showed off earlier for the PlayStation 1. And we have a cool puzzle game here called Baku Baku Animal, which is kind of like a Tetris, which is kind of like a puzzle fighter style game, I guess. And another puzzle game, obviously a classic Puzzle Bobble 2X. Let's come back around this way, because I think all the box art's on this side. There's a random Super Robot Wars fighting game, and that was kind of for my Quintet video because they have worked on some of them, just not that one. There's an obviously very popular fighting game for the Saturn, Fighters Mega Mix, where you can play as a car. Is the car on the back there? No, just take my word for it, you can play as a car. And there's a car, Virtua Racing, obviously a brilliant version on the Saturn. Now here's an interesting game. This is the original Dead or Alive, and I was a massive fan of DOA 2 on the Dreamcast, so it's really cool to see where the series got its start on the Sega Saturn. Okay, let's do these two Tetris games next, and I can tell you why I love one of them and why I hate the other one. So we have Tetris S and we have Tetris Plus. Now, Tetris S is probably one of the worst versions of Tetris that I've ever played. It's just extremely simple, it's quite slow, it takes a while for the blocks to disappear when you've made a link, and I honestly just don't really understand why this game exists. On the other hand, Tetris Plus is probably my favourite of all the original Tetris games. This one has a great classic mode with some of the best controls, and it also has the amazing puzzle game where you control this professor or his apprentice there, and you go through these different puzzle stages and collect treasure, and it's just one of my all-time favourite puzzle games, Tetris or otherwise. And then of course we have the two Nights games. We have Nights into Dreams and the Christmas version, only this winter, Christmas Nights. The Japanese version was actually a separate release, not part of a magazine like it was here in the UK. And then we have Bomberman. This is actually one of the Bomberman fighting games. And then we have Bomberman, which of course is one of the best multiplayer games on the system, up to 10 players with the right attachments. Gunbird, another really cool vertical scrolling shooter, one of my favourites, and I also love the sequel on the Dreamcast as well. This one's called Wangan Dead Heat, and it's kind of a mix of a racing game and a visual novel. You can see all the different people there on the side. Kind of interesting game. I wish it did play a little bit better though. Now here's one of the many Hebereke games. I don't really know what this one is called because there's no English on the other side. Let's just call it Hebereke's Puzzle Adventure. And it's again that sort of panic bomber style puzzle game. They're always really fun. And another puzzle game, or another few puzzle games, we have Magical Drop 3, which of course is a Neo Geo classic that was ported to the Saturn. We also have Super Puzzle Fighter, which I know a lot of people really love, and I'm a big fan of this game as well. But in my opinion, here's an even better puzzle game. This one follows on from what I love so much about Tetris Plus. This is called Guson Oyoyo S, and this is the same kind of game where you're actually trying to help a character that's inside the puzzle stage get to the end of the level. It's really difficult, but I really love these games, and there's just a few more in the series that I want to try and get. And then I might consider making a retrospective on the entire series, because I feel like this is definitely a series that not enough people know about. And the final game for the Saturn here, how can you have a Saturn collection without Sonic R? And now for the Dreamcast, and I really don't have that many games for the Dreamcast. In fact, I only have these few games here, and the few that I showed off in the last video. So let's have a quick look. We have Sonic Adventure 2, Room Mania 203, which is a really interesting game that Tetsuya Mizuguchi actually worked on, so that's why I picked that one up. Godzilla Generations, again, a game that actually needs to come down here, and I'll explain that a bit later on, if there's space for it. There we go. Sega Rally Championship, or Sega Rally 2, and Cyvaria 2, another vertical scrolling shooter that I really enjoy for the system. So there's my incredibly small Japanese Dreamcast collection. Please let me know down in the comments what other Japanese Dreamcast games you would recommend for me. And then to end this shelf off, we have a few PC Engine CD games, and the rest of the PC Engine games are down there, which we'll get to in just a little bit. So let's take a look at what we've got here. This one technically isn't Japanese, but I didn't know where to put it. This is Easebooks 1 and 2 for the Turbo CD. And now we move on to the Japanese games. This is Valis 3, a really cool action platformer. Here's one of many vertical scrolling shoot-em-ups that I've got for the system. Summer Carnival 92. There's a random puzzle game. And I'll do a separate video on my PC Engine collection in the future as well. Now this one, I really don't enjoy this game much, and I'm glad it was fairly cheap. It was only 20 quid. There's another Valis game, Valis 4 this time. And Valis 2, potentially? Yes, and Valis 2 as well. And Sidearm Special. I think I own this game twice. This is a cool horizontal scrolling shooter. And another one, of course. I'm sure you all know what Darius is and what the Darius series is all about. Then we have Wonder Boy 3, The Monster's Lair, which is not your typical Wonder Boy game. I was expecting a platforming RPG, but it's actually a lot more of an action slash arcade style game. Kind of more in line with the original series, so maybe I got mixed up on them. There's my other copy of Sidearms, for some reason. Now, this is a really cool game. This is Shubibin Man 3, or Shockman 3. Kind of, some people refer to it as the PC Engine version of Mega Man, but I don't really think so. I think they're just really, really good action platformers. Dragon Spirits, another really cool vertical scrolling shoot-em-up. And the final game here, The Ninja Warriors, which is a game that I was actually fairly disappointed in. So I know maybe some people will be upset with me about that. But anyway, I'll cover these in more detail in the future. So that was this shelf, and now let's move down to the next one. So on this shelf here, I actually have a variety of different things from a range of different consoles as well. I actually moved some of the GameCube games down here, so I covered these in part 1, so go back and watch that if you want to know about these ones. So let's move these Game Boy games out of the way, and I can show you what else is on here. So I have 3 Japanese Switch games. For some reason I have the Secret of Mana collection, and then I actually have 2 Japan exclusives, and I really enjoy both of these games. So let's start with this one. We have The Fruits of Grisaya, which is a really cool visual novel series, and I was really enjoying playing through this. I'm still only on the first game, and it is kind of a slow burn, so I don't know if I'll actually get around to playing the other games on this, but it is the full collection of all the games that were released at the time. And the second one here is Esperade, which again is an amazing vertical scrolling shooter, perhaps my favourite vertical scrolling shooter out of all vertical scrolling shooters, so definitely recommend checking that one out. And then next to that is my PlayStation Vita collection, so let's have a look at what we've got here. Some English games as well, like Lumines and E's Memories of Salsetta, Akiba's Beat, and now we're moving on to the Japanese games. We have this one, which is quite interesting, Miracle Girls Festival, is actually part of the Project Diva series, and not a lot of people know that, but it actually plays exactly the same as Project Diva, except it's girls from all kinds of different anime from the time, so really happy to find that one in Japan. And of course I do have all the Project Diva games. There's F2, there's another copy of F2 for some reason, there's X, which I didn't really like as much as the other ones, and there's the original Project Diva F as well, which is probably my favourite of the bunch on the Vita. And then we also have some of the Steins Gate games. We have IA VT Colourful, which is another music rhythm game. Not as good as the Project Diva games, but it was cool to see IA get her own game as well, so I was kind of happy from that point of view. And DJ Max Technica Tune as well is another really fun music rhythm game for the system too. And here as well on the side, I almost skipped past these, I also have all of these loose HuCards, which I will struggle to hold in one hand, but if you can see them, I'll do a full video in the future where I cover some of the loose HuCards as well as the rest of my PC Engine collection, but that is just gonna fall everywhere, so I don't really know how I'll do that for now. So subscribe if you want to see them, and let's move on. We have 3 Neo Geo Pocket games right there. I do have some more, but I'm not sure where the boxes are for them. And next, Biomotor Unitron was very difficult to find and also quite expensive, so I'm very happy to add that one to the collection. Here's some loose Game Boy games, and there's a lot more there, so we'll come back to them maybe in the next part. And here's some of my Japanese DS games. Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything that catches your eye. This one's really fun. This is one of the Taiko Drum Master games, and it actually came with little drumsticks to use on the touchscreen, which I thought was a really neat touch. Now here's one of my favourites. This is Kuruin Donuts, and I actually made my own donut-based platformer, and this was one of the inspirations behind it. So always really happy to have that. There's another Umihara Kawase, and next to that is Umihara Kawase for the 3DS as well. And here's some Famicom Disk System games. Not that many, and my disk system's actually broken, so I've never actually been able to play these, but it's still really cool to actually own them, and I would love to be able to play them at some point. Otaki, this one here, is one of the first rhythm-style platforming games, so I was really interested to get that one. And then here's a little look at my Virtual Boy collection. So Panic Bomber is a game that a lot of other puzzle games are very similar to, so if you enjoy puzzle games, that's a really fun one. And V-Tetris as well is great. And obviously Wario Land, if you've got a Virtual Boy, that is always the game for the system that people tell you to get. So now on this shelf down, here's the rest of the PC Engine games. A few more European ones here. We have Bravo Man, Pac-Land and Blazing Lasers, which is actually Gunhead, the Japanese version. And then under there, here's all of my HuCard games. So Superstar Soldier is a really good one. Raiden is probably my favourite on the entire system. It's kind of hard to show these ones because they don't actually have any pictures on the back, which is kind of disappointing. And it also makes it really difficult to actually look when you're in Japan or when you're looking at PC Engine games to actually find out what game you think would be interesting to play. Like Don Dokudon's a really interesting one, but if you saw that cover of a gnome and you didn't know what the game was, you would have no idea. Soldier Blade, obviously a classic for the system. And there's the rest of the games right there. And then on this stack here, we have another one of the Shubibin Man games. The game that I said is kind of like Mega Man, but also not really. A great version of Street Fighter 2. Final Soldier, another really cool vertical scrolling shooter for the system. And these are all Super CD games. There's Summer Carnival 93. That one's quite a rare vertical scrolling shooter as well, with some really nice graphics. Look how cool that looks. So very happy to have that one. And again, I'll do a full video in the future about the rest of the PC Engine games. It's kind of difficult to get to them. And here's all my loose Famicom games here. I love the colours on the Famicom. They're so fun. That one's a really fun game. And of course the Mega Man games are all really good. I think I have a bunch of Mega Man games here somewhere. There's another one, Rockman 5. Look at the colour of that cartridge, isn't it just really cool? Why couldn't our NES games be like that? There's Kirby as well with its bright pink cartridge all over, which is so cool. Hatris, Tetris 2. Quintet's an interesting one. You might recognise the art style. That's again a Game Freak game before they made Pokemon, so really happy to have that one. There's Advance Wars, or Famicom Wars, sorry. Really cool gold cartridge there for Super Xevious, even though the game's not that great, in my opinion. And there's Rockman X2. And this is actually the shelf that I was most excited about. This is all of my Quintet games so far. And these are all from the same developer, and they're all very, very different games. And there's a bunch of PS2 ones there. And I'm slowly building up this collection, and eventually I want to do a full video about the developer and about all of their games, and I'm planning to play through them all on Twitch as well. And so far I've played through ActRaiser, most of ActRaiser 2, although it's way too difficult, and I've played all the way through Soul Blazer. So next on the list is Illusion of Time, which is my favourite game ever, so let's see whether it holds up to that status when I get around to playing it. And then Robotrek, and then Terranigma, and here's the Japanese versions of a few of them. I'll show you the box art for the Japanese version of Illusion of Time, known as Gaia Gensoki, because that is just an incredible cover. Kind of difficult to see with this plastic wrapper on it, but you've got the nice foil logo at the bottom there, and then you have the two main characters really nicely hand-drawn, and a really cool background. How cool is that? It just looks amazing. And on the back, we actually get some photos of the developers as well, which is really cool, and not something that you get on the UK one. So really, really love that. That's a prized piece of the collection for me. And here's a look at some of their other games. There's another Dreamcast game up there. That was the Godzilla one that I pulled out earlier. And also this one, which is called Cho Hatsume Boy. And they also released the same game on the PS1 as well. I'll probably do a separate video where I cover all these in more detail, but just so that you can see what is here. Here's a look at all of the games that they either had an involvement with or actually developed entirely from scratch. And there's a lot more than what people think. So I'm really excited to get into this in the future. There's another Godzilla. Maximum Impact, Planet Laika. I actually got a fan translation recently. That one there is a racing game called The Zero Yon. Haven't took that one out of the packaging yet. I haven't got a chance to play it just yet. Kodar is kind of an interesting racing game as well. And Solo Crisis, not a lot of people know, but it's actually a spiritual sequel to ActRaiser, which is really cool. And then a bunch of very, very random and obscure PS2 games that probably no one's ever heard of. And this game here as well, which was called Kowloon's Gate. And they had a hand in this when they kind of switched companies, but I'll cover that in the future. And this book here is actually written by the writer for Illusion of Time, and I'm about halfway through it, and I've been quite enjoying it. And next to that we have a guidebook for Illusion of Gaia, Illusion of Time. And this very particular issue of Game Fan, which has a big interview in there with some Quintet staff. And next there we have the big boxes for the Nights into Dreams PS2 version, the Clannad big box, and this here is Xanadu for the PC 98, I think. So in here it actually has the big floppy disks for the PC back in the day, so that's really cool to have. And the camera is almost out of power, so I have to be quite quick. Here's my Manichemia premium box. I've covered this one a few times on the channel in the past, but I finally found somewhere to put it. And then under there is all of my loose Super Famicom games. And in there's actually all of the soundtrack discs that I went through in the previous episode, and that's actually stored in my Super Monkey Ball box that Sega sent me over when Banana Mania was released, so really happy to have that. And just so you can have a quick look, let's flick through. And some of these need putting away in their actual box, but we've got Final Fantasy VI, Cosmo Gang. That's one of those build your own shoot 'em up kind of games, which is really fun. This one's a game that was kind of difficult to find for a long time. This is Kirby Superstar Stacker, which is a really fun puzzle game. That one needs to go in the box, that's Terranigma. I'll actually put that one up there. Here's another fun shooting game, Strike Gunner. Another one of the Tetris games. Mario and Wario has the box. I need to organise these, and Star Ocean. This one's an interesting one. Ihatovo Monogatari. One of the first proper story-based games with like branching paths and different characters and a really interesting town to explore. There's Dreamland 3 with its really nice shiny cover. I was very happy when I got that one for the first time. And let's see if we can move these out of the way quickly. And then here's a look at the last few games on the back of this shelf. There's Mega Man and Bass, or Rockman and Bass. Another one of the Hebereke games. I think that one was a racing game. Tetris. That one's a racing game as well. Kind of a simulation style racing game. There's another Hebereke game. Told you there's lots of Hebereke games. Puyo Puyo. Mario's Picross. Great game, although the SNES isn't the best place to play that really. There's another Rockman, Rockman 7. Dragon Quest, more Puyo Puyo. Bomberman Biederman, which is like a really weird, interesting multiplayer spin-off. Psycho Dreams, an interesting action platformer. Tokimeki Memorial, one of the most important games in the visual novel genre. So really happy to own that. And I would love to get boxes for these that don't have a box, like this one, Ease 3. Would love to get a box for that. And there's another Valis game. We showed off some Valis games earlier. That one's a pretty fun puzzle game. That one's a pretty fun platformer, and we're ending with another Dragon Quest game, which is the remake of Dragon Quest 1 and 2. And I think I will cover these books in a future video, along with some of the other gaming books that I actually own. So there we go. It's a bit of a mess now, but that was a look at my Japanese games shelf. If you haven't seen the top half of the shelf, then go back and watch part 1. And I'll cover these Game Boy games in a future video as well. So, thank you so much for watching. That was a long one. I really hope you enjoyed taking a look through my Japanese games collection. If you didn't see the first part, then click up there to watch that one. And if you want to watch my room tour videos from the beginning, then click up there and check out the playlist. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye.